Hello, welcome. My name's Doug Gordon. I'm host of the show Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories, where the aim of the show is to interview inspiring people who've either been successful in their field or inspired others to success in some form. Today's guest is Jack Daly. Jack is a Forbes recognized best-selling author, a top CEO, a business coach, and one of the top speakers in the world on the topic of sales and sales management. Jack was also the UK Overseas Speaker of the Year, Australian Overseas Speaker of the Year, and author of several best-selling books, including Hyper Sales Growth and Life by Design. As well as being hugely successful in the business world, Jack is also an amazing athlete and has run 100 marathons in 50 different states and in 7 continents all around the world. He's also done 15 Ironmans and was in the US team in 2012. Since meeting Jack in 2018, we've become great friends, and I have to say, he really is a true inspiration and a pleasure to have on the show. Jack, welcome to the show.
Doug, whenever somebody does an intro like that, I'm going, how many extra hours was this guy blessed with in life? Good to see you, my friend.
And you, and you have been blessed in life. I mean, I've seen you speak so many times on stage. We've shared the stage a couple of times as well. And you've been absolutely fantastic. And always I get people saying to me, where does that guy get his energy from? And I know you've even recently, well, a few years ago now, you went through cancer and you beat it easily. You're in perfect health now. Tell us a little bit about how Jack Daly became so energetic and so inspiring.
I think the absolute important second in my life was when my mother gave birth to me. I think I came right out of the chute and said, let's go. And so there's a bit of this energy that comes genetically. And I think about my mom who passed away 15 years ago. And she was just so vibrant, so energetic. And you know, she was up for 24 hours, and she was still working in her 70s, and she was going to the casino to play blackjack. And I called her from the other coast because I live on the West Coast. She lives on the East Coast. And she said, gosh, I'm feeling really sad. And I said, you're never sad. What is that about? She said, well, I feel like I'm getting old. Now, this is when she's in her early 70s. And she goes, and I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, well, I'm just really tired. And I said, well, tell me what it's been like for the last, 24, 48 hours. Well, she hadn't been to bed in over 24 hours. I'm feeling tired. So part of it is genetic. And the other part, Doug, I think is I put a high priority on taking care of myself physically. And the fact that I'm in good shape physically, I think feeds that energy along the way. And then there's a third component, and that is I can't remember ever working. In other words, everything that I do is with joy, fun, passion, and vigor. So when you combine that cocktail, those 3 pieces, I have a life advantage. Yeah.
I love that. And on that note, I know that you shared many times, and normally you share this at the end, but I'd like to start with it. The lessons from the Ironman that you often share into, I think it's 7 lessons, I can't quite remember.
Yeah, so look, when I finished doing the Ironman, which is a 3.8 kilometer swim on the clock and a 180 kilometer bike on the clock, and then a 42K run on the clock, all consecutively done the same day. When I finished the World Championship in Kona, Hawaii, my wife and I put an extra weekend for a little rest and relaxation, and I went down to the beach. I had my medal, I had my chair, I had my sun protection, I had my umbrella, and I had a pad and a pen. And I started doodling on what were the lessons I learned in this journey. And as you know, I didn't start doing the Ironman until I was 58 years old because I didn't learn how to swim until I was 58, right? So what were those lessons? And the lessons that I wrote down, I looked at the list and I turned to my wife and I said, my God, they're the same lessons that I think were the result of my having successful businesses that I built. And as you know, I built 6 companies in the US, international firms, and a couple sold to Wall Street, very fast growing, profitable companies. So here's the lessons. The first lesson is you got to have a vision. And so I had a vision when I first started doing Ironman of I'm going to complete this Ironman, and eventually I'm going to find a way to qualify for the Ironman World Championship. And there's a person, for anybody that's listening here, there's a historic person in the Ironman sport called Julie Moss. And if you go onto YouTube and just punch in Ironman Julie Moss, you'll see the story there. But I had a photo of her taped to my bathroom mirror of her crawling across the finish line in the Ironman. And when I watched it on TV, I said, I'm so inspired. If she can do it, I can do it. And so every day I envisioned myself going and crossing that same finish line in Kona. Every one of my businesses had a vision as well. So that's the first order of business. The second thing is the importance of having systems and processes, to have a playbook. And so every one of my businesses had systems and processes and best practices. And then every one of my Ironman sports had systems and processes that were important to follow. The third was that you needed to practice. I mean, if you want to be good at anything in life, you got to practice. If you're a salesperson, you want to be better, you need to practice. Because if you're not practicing before you get to the client, that means that you're practicing on the client, God forbid, right? And so the best people in life practice. And I tell you, doing the Ironman is a celebration day after all that practice that took place 6 to 12 months prior, getting up and doing all of the hard work. Well, that's the same thing that's true in business as well. Now, the next lesson that I learned was the importance of measurement. Things that get measured get done. And so I have these extensive measurement systems on my personal life, on my Ironman sport, on my marathon sport, and on my businesses. Things that get measured get done. And when I hold some of those materials up when I'm speaking to an audience, people are like, what the heck is going on with this guy? He's even measuring every day whether he flossed his teeth or not. I mean, what is this guy doing, right? So the fifth lesson that I learned is the importance of having a coach. So here I am. I'm now reached the 70s in age, and I tell you, I have 14 coaches in my life that are helping me take my life to another level. I have 5 on my personal goals, I have 3 on my business, and I have 6 on my triathlon sport. And so I said, people have already figured out most of this before me. I'm going to get them to tell me what to do and then hold me accountable. The sixth lesson was how important it is to stay fit. And I say that not just in the Ironman, which is obvious, but how about in business and in your family life? Prioritizing taking care of yourself physically, I think, is important. It adds to the quantity and the quality of our life going forward. And I think that we can work longer hours, we can work smarter hours, and we can handle rejection better if we take care of ourselves from a fitness standpoint. And then the last is really where we started this whole conversation, Doug, and that is the 6 inches between our ears. That is having a growth mindset, being positively, attitudinally correct. People will ask me, well, the typical greeting, how you doing today? And I always pause and then fantastic. And people are taken back by that. And then I go, well, we get a choice, right? And so, I'm figuring somebody got up before me today and picked crappy. So I picked fantastic. You take those 7 lessons, I think you got something magical.
I love that. And obviously the last one in terms of growth mindset is key. And it brings me in terms of the word growth, into your first book that I read, which was Hyper Sales Growth, which if anybody hasn't read this, it's a fantastic book. And it's probably, I would say, the basis of a lot of your trainings that you did in your earlier part of the career and everything like that as well, correct?
Absolutely, Doug. And thanks for, holding the book up there and mentioning it. That book has changed so many businesses for the good and so many individuals for the good. And it's interesting that it's called Hyper Sales Growth because it's actually a book in three different parts. And the first part is on the big picture of building a business. What is the entrepreneur and CEO? Where do they need to invest their time? And creating a winning culture where people that work in your company actually look forward to getting out of bed and going to work, right? So that's the first part. And then the second part is on sales management, which is different than sales because sales management is all about recruiting, training, coaching, building, and developing out a sales force. I've been in sales since I was 7 years old. So I've been at it a long time. I think I'm pretty good at it. But here's the weakness. There's only 24 hours in a day. I can only make so many calls, take so many calls, and write so many orders. But what if I were to hire 5 people and teach them what I know about selling? They'll outperform me. Well, what if it was 10? And what if it was 20? And then if I go to the extreme, my largest sales force, 2,600 salespeople. Well, now, even if I were the best salesperson and left, the company wouldn't even feel reverberation, right? So the key in growing your business is to grow your sales force in quantity and quality. So that's the second part of that book. And then the third part is sales. How does a salesperson win new customers, grow the ones they have, and differentiate themselves from the competition? So even though the book is called Hyper Sales Growth, a salesperson, when they buy it, I just tell them, go to the third part and start there. And then if you're interested, you can read part 1 and 2. But so many of the purchases of Hyper Sales Growth are being done by business entrepreneurs and owners of the business. So I catered that to the front end of it.
And I know you're an amazing salesperson, you're an amazing sales speaker, motivational, inspirational speaker, and you've spoken all around the world with some of the most, well, the best speakers in the world. I remember when I was seeing you, you were speaking alongside Richard Branson. I know you've spoken alongside Tony Robbins, all of the best in the world. My question, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who'd love to know this. When you were first starting out, how did you work towards to be able to be recognized as one of those best speakers and get the gigs as well at the same time?
Yeah, so between 26 and 46 years old, Doug, you know this, I built a bunch of businesses. And then I lost the passion for running and building a business. And I say, if you can't get up in the morning and be passionate about what you're doing, you should do something else. So that's when I said, I'm done. And I called my board and I called my investors and said, the leader that we have right now, me, doesn't belong in this seat. Let's replace me. And then I backed into the speaking business because when people heard that I wasn't going to work every day, they're calling me up and saying, can you speak here? Can you speak there? Can you speak here? However, and after 3 months of that, by the way, I said to my wife, you know, I'm having a lot of fun and making a difference. And my goodness, I don't have any employees. This is wonderful. I can work when I want to work, where I want to work, only as much as I want to work. You know, it was really cool. I'm going to do some more of this. And my wife turned to me and went, God bless, just do something to get the hell out of this house. Right. but here's how I characterized the first 3 years of my speaking business. Starving speaker. Now, I didn't advertise that, but that's what I looked at. I was a guy that was making 7 figures in the business world, and I was working now 6 days a week, 12 hours a day as a speaker, trying to figure out how to break the code. And my first year, I made less than $100,000. But I was still living a lifestyle as if I was making 7 figures. And if you do that for enough years, you probably run out of gas. So I needed to, quote unquote, figure it out, which is what a growth mindset person does. Figure it out, right? And, you know, there's one very normal track that you can go through, which is speaker bureaus and meeting planners and nurturing those relationships. And the majority of speakers go that route. And I am not opposed to that, but I chose a different route. And what I said was, who writes the check? That's kind of what a salesperson's kind of analysis does. Who writes the check if they hire a speaker? Well, in most cases, it's the business owner, entrepreneur, CEO. And so I said, all right, do they hang out anywhere together? And what I discovered is they do. They belong to organizations like Vistage and YPO and EO and the Council of Growing Companies and CEO Global, and the list just keeps going on. And so I said, well, I'm going to go and crack that code and speak in front of those groups. Because if they rate me as somebody that does a credible job, well, then they'll get their checkbook out and start writing the check. And so, I did a lot of those organizations for more than 2 decades. And Jim Collins would say the flywheel doesn't move very fast and has a lot of effort in the beginning. And then when it gets rolling, you get rolling. And my flywheel has been rolling for a long time now without having to do as much of that. So I'm very happy with the track that I took. I'm also supportive of the traditional way.
I love that. And, I can still see it, 75 years of age. I can see you speaking all the time because I can see it on social media and everything like that, which is great. And, like me, you've worked and you've done a lot of sales training with people who sell real products, as in, like, whether it be, you know, companies that sell construction, or they sell some kind of widget or something like that. And sales isn't always easy. What were the key sales tips that you always give in your training to help people?
Well, the first one is pretty shocking, Doug. Quit selling. So that's first piece of advice. I've yet to meet a person on the planet that says, I love being attacked by a salesperson who's trying to sell me something. That makes my day. People do not want to be sold. And so, wow, well, wait a second. That's what I'm hired to do as a salesperson. You're telling me not to do it. And so I just said, tweak it. Just tweak it a little bit. Help them to buy. And the subtle difference between that is profound. Help them with their needs, their opportunities, their problems, their pains. Help put them in a place of pleasure. Find a way that your product or service can actually elevate their game, but either as a business or on a personal level. And by the way, the very best salespeople help their prospects and customers in the best way that they can. Watch this, even if it means not selling their product or service. In other words, if the pain is such that you're not the answer, but you know somebody who is, make the introduction, make the referral. And if we do enough of that goodness, then I think referrals, and when it's your time, they'll call you. 90% of my business, Doug, is repeat and referral. Mm. And people just say, if you need that answer, go call Jack. And if Jack doesn't have the answer, he'll find somebody who does have the answer. And when you've got that kind of a reputation, what you did is you cracked the code of sales. And here is the code of sales. Selling is the transfer of trust. Mm. At the end of the day, people do business with people they trust. And so somebody that works hard to help you with your issues, even if it means no sale to you, just burst through the trust bubble. And once you've got it, you pretty much got it for life.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. And I remember when I became vulnerable with my clients and showed a bit of trust for them by maybe sharing something that maybe I wouldn't normally with somebody, they then were, vulnerable with me, and it creates that trust, creates long-term relationships, and it's about the relationships that build the sales in the long term. And I think a lot of people in certain trades try and get quick wins rather than that long-term relationship, which is wrong.
Hey, listen, Doug, about 7 years ago, when I lost my wife to cancer after 52 years of a relationship together, I took on CEO coaching. And when she passed 9 months later after being diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, my clients came to me and said, hey, you're not going to stop coaching, are you? And I said, no, and I continue to do that today. However, when I'm contacted by people and say, I'd like to talk to you about coaching. What I can tell you is that for every 20 inquiries, 19 of them don't materialize into a coaching relationship with me because I'm not the right coach for them. They're not the right client for me, but I don't let them just go out into the universe without trying to help them. So I refer them to other people. I make suggestions on, if I were in your shoes, this is what I would do. But I'm very, very particular about making sure that I'm not just generating revenue from a coaching relationship, but that I'm actually making a positive contribution to the person. And again, that business is repeat, it's referral, and it's joyous because I'm not selling. I'm actually very authentic about wanting to help that person because I was that person. I was that entrepreneur. I was that business owner. And I know how important having a coach is. Here I am in the 70s with 14 coaches still today.
Well, I know. I have to say, I've seen you both in a training perspective, which you're absolutely fantastic, and the coaching perspective, which you're also equally as fantastic as well. And the amount of added value you give both to the audience and in individual one-to-one coaching is phenomenal. And if anybody's out there looking for one, definitely highly, highly recommend Jack because he's superb. And what's superb about you, Jack, is that you've done it in business, you've done it in the world of relationships, and you've also done it in terms of sport and everything like that. And when I mean the relationships, you literally, you were with your wife from age 16 till 70, if I remember correctly. And, it was the most beautiful relationship you ever had. You were the most loyal, wonderful husband. And then I remember when you were speaking in Dublin in 2018, it was literally 3 months or 2 months, I think, after that your wife had passed. And, as terrible as that was, you came up on that stage. And in my viewpoint, compared to the other 12 speakers, you were the best by far. And that just shows the kind of person that you are and the energy you put in and the added value that you give all the time as well.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that, Doug.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's so much you've done in terms of sales. That you've given a few tips there. Quite often, though, the best sales managers get pushed into the sales management role, which is sometimes a mistake. And I know you've given in the past sales management or leadership mistakes. I'd love you to share them with the audience as well.
Yeah, so I would go back to the way you characterized it and said sometimes that doesn't work out well. I would elevate that to most frequently it doesn't work out well. Taking a top performing salesperson, make them a sales manager. So here's the three big mistakes that I think happen when I look at entrepreneurial led companies. One is the business owner entrepreneur also is wearing the hat of a sales manager. And look, that person could be capable of wearing either one of those hats, but if you're wearing both, what that means is anytime you're wearing one, you're not wearing the other. So if you're spending 50% of your time as the business owner and 50% of the time as a sales manager, well, the sales manager, whoever's building the sales team and leads the sales team, that's where your growth comes from. So if you've only allocated 50% to that, you basically are growing part-time. You're growing your business part-time. And an awful lot of smaller companies, early stage companies will say, well, when we get bigger and I can afford that person, I will hire them. Well, that's the person that gets you there. So there's, if you really want to scale, you have to put someone in that role of leading and building the sales team. And what I've found is if you hire the right person, in less than a year, they should pay for themselves with the increased business that they and their team drive. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake is the one we just talked about, which is taking your best salesperson and make them the sales manager. Two very entirely different jobs and different skill sets. So what makes a really great salesperson isn't necessarily what's going to make a good sales manager. And very often what happens is we don't give them any training, we don't give them any guidance, We just shake their hand and say, good luck, go for it. And after about 3 to 6 months, the person just wants to go back and sell again because they're not having success. They don't enjoy working with the team, all of those types of things. So then they ultimately quit to go sell, often for a competitor. And now look at where we're at. We lost our best salesperson and we have no sales manager. Shoot me. And then the worst of all three mistakes is taking your best salesperson, making the sales manager, and then saying, continue with your territory and sell. Because that individual is going to spend almost all their time selling and very little time on the sales management side. So what holds a lot of companies back from hyper sales growth, from significant growth, I'm not talking about single digits. I'm not even talking about double digit growth. I'm talking about significant growth. What often holds them back is that one thing that you just brought up, which is making a mistake in terms of sales management, sales leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the two books that I've read, obviously the first one being Hyper Sales Growth, which is fantastic. And then the second one, which is your more recent book, which Simon Sinek gave a lovely testimony at the front there, is obviously this one, which is Life by Design. Tell us a little about the difference that's in this book and why people should read it.
Yeah, so it's nothing to do about business. I just pinch myself, Doug, on the quality of the life that I've had heretofore. It's been magical. And when people see what I do in a single year, or they see what I do over a 5-year period on the personal side of my life, they're always going, my God, like you do more in a year than most people do in their life. And how do you find the time and all the rest of that type of thing? Well, we're all given the same amount of time. So that's 168 hours a week. Some of us are using it better than others. Look, the first priority is define what success means to you in your personal life. If I got on stage and asked my audience how many people by a show of hands would like to be more successful, every hand would be up. But if I left the stage and went out with a mic and said, tell me what success means to you, it's crickets. Now, if you can't define what success is, well, you can't map out the route to take to achieve it. So I learned a lesson very, very early in my life. At 13 years old, I became a caddy at a private country club. Now, I grew up in a very, very poor family. 2 parents and 5 kids in one house with one toilet. Like barely, my dad working 6 days a week, barely able to feed and clothe us. I have a brother that's 3 years younger than I am, and I don't think he ever saw new clothes. He just got Jack's hand-me-downs. And so that's the family that I grew up in. And all of a sudden, I'm out as a caddy, and the members are arriving in Porsches and BMWs and Mercedes, and I get their bags out of their trunk, and they're playing golf on Wednesday. They're playing golf on Friday. These are work days in my mind. I mean, and they're living in big estate homes with building pools in their yards, and I just said, wow, there's a different world than what my dad's living in, and if he knew how to teach me, he would already know himself, so he can't teach me, but these guys can. So I interviewed them while I carried their clubs. And I had them captive for 4 to 4.5 hours. How did you become so successful? What were the 5 biggest things that made that happen? What are the 5 mistakes? What would you tell me to do as 13-year-old? What would you tell me not to do? And I found a pattern of answers. So here's the biggest thing that I got. 1, you got to have goals, and they need to be in writing. 2, don't pick too many, because if you pick too many, you'll dilute your energy. 3, put a time frame on when you're going to get them done. And 4, share them with other people, and that'll increase accountability. And so I sat down at 13. I came up with 4 goals in my life, and where I was going to be on those 4 by the age of 30 when I was old, because at 13, old was 30. And so one of them was, what am I going to look like at 30 years old financially? Like, what's my net worth going to be? What's my annual income going to be? Um, and then the second one was, what am I going to look like professionally? And so I said, I wanted to be the CEO of a company. I wanted it to be national in size. I wanted to be in the money business. The third was, what am I going to look like educationally? And the fourth was, what do I want my family to look like at the age of 30? Was single, married, kids, all of that. Now, once I have my vision, once I have my destination, then we just go backwards. What do I need to do between 29 and 30, 28 to 29 in each one of the four boxes? And, look, it's within reach here in my office. I take this out and I'm doing it every year. And these are my goals for this year. They were all together. They're on my website called jackdaleyslifebydesign.com, and people can go see them. And I carry it around in this calendar because I measure every day what I'm doing on the personal side of my life. And I have 60 plus years of these documents because I've been doing it since I was 13. So that's called Jack's Life by Design. And if people don't want to read or listen to the book, they should at least go to my website, jackdaleyslifebydesign.com, because I took half the book, which is the appendix, with all of the templates filled in and blank for people to use to design their life without having to read the book. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory how to go through this process.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things you mentioned there is about writing goals down. Is that something? I know some people that I've interviewed before have said they write their goals down in I am grateful statements as if they've already got them, and they do this every single day. Is that something you do, or you just do it once and leave it for, you know?
Yeah. So once I'm baked and done for the first of the year, that plan for the year stays in place. But because of this and the process of filling this out every day, I am looking at this every day. Yeah. And then I have my 5 coaches that I call the board of directors of my life. Then I ask one-on-one 4 times a year. I want you guys to go line by line and see if I'm doing what I said I was going to do. So four times a year times 5 people is 20 times a year. People are holding me accountable. And the people that I have on my board of directors of my life, Doug, are chosen very carefully. I want people that care immensely about me and will not take my bullshit. Like, they're going to call me out. And so it's a tough group. And I'm not going to show up for a one-on-one with any one of those 5 without having my work be done. So, I'm remarried with Karen now, and Karen's on my board of directors of my life, and she also follows the same process. And so we're checking each other at least once a month. And hey, I don't want to live with somebody and say, well, I put that stuff down, but it didn't really materialize. And she doesn't want to live with me when I'm going to be the bear coming in and going, what do you mean you didn't get that done? Don't waste my time. I'm a busy guy. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it, right? So that's the type of person you want as your coach.
And I love that. And you're really talking about the fact that there's passion, there's purpose, you're being productive, you've got your vision in place, you're measuring, as you were saying earlier on, and that's helping you keep the subconscious mind clicked into those goals. And that's why you're achieving them, which I absolutely
love. Look, I'm looking at right behind you with your best-selling book there, and you go and pound that over and over and over again in terms of energizing your life, charge yourself up for success. I mean, that was one of the platforms in which you and I shared and met.
Yeah, and you very kindly testimony the book, which I'm so grateful for as well. So, which has been fantastic. Jack, there's something. The last question I always like to ask people is, and you have covered probably this, but there might be something else, is if you were to speak to your younger 18-year-old self, is there any other advice that you haven't shared so far with that person that might help them in the future?
I think there is. We have one life to live, and we get to control it. In spite of whatever the media is going to tell you, we actually get to control our life. Why not have one of great happiness? So if you find yourself at any stage in business, in your personal life, where you're going, I don't get up in the morning and I'm not excited about this. Don't fear, just change it. Just change it. Look, life does not go like this. It's ups and downs, ups and downs. So if you take a setback because you changed the environment, you'll figure it out, and you'll be a lot happier for it. So I'm obviously a big planner. I talked about, systems and process and a playbook, and I talked about having my goals and all of those types of things. But at the end of the day, if that's not getting me energized and jumping out of bed, then I need to change my environment and put myself into a place where I'm passionate again, because when I find that place, all the other things start falling into place. So be happy.
I love that. Yeah. Connect to your heart self, your true vision in life, and go out there and live it with absolute passion, which you've always done. Jack, we're running out of time. So I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. If anybody hasn't bought this amazing book, Jack Daly's Life by Design, and also Hyper Sales Growth, you've got to get them. I've read them both. They're absolutely fantastic. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure, as always, having you on the show, and I wish you every success going forward.
Doug, as you know, I'm headed over to your island coming the fourth quarter, and I'm planning on seeing you there, brother.
Looking forward to it, as always.
Okay. Cheers.
My name's Doug Gordon, and you've been listening to Jack Daly on Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. I'll be back next week with another inspirational guest. In the meantime, if you need to get in touch, please contact me at doug@dougdgordon.com. From all of us here in the team of the show, I wish you a truly inspirational weekend and look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye for now.